What does science have to say about Savasana, the final relaxation pose, also known as corpse pose, that ends most yoga classes? For the answer, stay tuned. Most people end their yoga practices in the posture known as Savasana, or corpse pose. Some people teach, indeed, that if you skip Savasana, you haven't really done your yoga practice. Or that Savasana is kind of the capstone that really culminates the practice and seals the benefits in, so to speak. But what does science have to say about Savasana? Well, first of all, Savasana is obviously relaxing. You completely let go. And by the way, the relaxation in Savasana is deeper than the relaxation of just lying down on a couch. And this has been shown in scientific studies. You go more deeply into toning the parasympathetic nervous system, getting into that rest and digest mode, that restorative mode in Savasana than you do just kicking back on the couch. Okay, so there's something about Savasana that seems to have some benefits beyond just what most people outside of yoga call relaxation. What we call relaxation in yoga is something that is potentially much deeper than that. Now, one thing to consider is that very few yoga studies study yoga poses in isolation. So we mostly don't know what individual yoga poses do, but then again, we use them together. So, and it's the cumulative effect of multiple things that seem to bring the most benefits. Now, one thing we do know from scientific research is that when you compare someone who just tries to relax, say just lies down straight away into Savasana, versus someone who has exerted themselves, say done in more active yoga practice, and then goes into Savasana, that the relaxation will be deeper if first you've done something to, so to speak, burn off some of the steam. For one thing, if your mind is going 100 miles an hour, you may not even be able to relax at all in Savasana. And sometimes the more exerting practice can help you get to that place of relaxation. Now, there was some very interesting research done about 45 years ago, 1975 study, published in the very prestigious British medical journal, The Lancet. This was done by a researcher by the name of Chandra Patel. And she gave people with high blood pressure a combination of Savasana for about 20 minutes a time and some biofeedback that let them know if they were achieving a good amount of relaxation. Now, while she used biofeedback in the study, what people do in biofeedback is what skilled yoga practitioners do without biofeedback. And that is that via your yoga practice, you learn to tune into your body, to be able to notice when it's relaxing or not relaxing, and take steps that allow relaxation to go deeper. So I don't think the biofeedback is an absolutely essential thing, even though she did study Savasana and biofeedback together. Now, what she found was impressive. People's blood pressure between the beginning of the study and when they finished at 3 months was something like 20 points lower in the diastolic reading and somewhere between 10 and 15 points lower in the diastolic reading, the lower of the two readings. She followed this up over a 12-month period, and most of those drops in blood pressure were maintained by the people who learned to do Shavasana. They were only doing it 3 times a week in her study for 20 minutes, but they were encouraged to do it when they get home, although not everybody did. And of course, this is a problem with yoga. Yoga only works as long as you do it. You can do brilliant yoga for 3 months, make all your symptoms from some disease go away, and then you may decide you don't need the yoga anymore, and then lo and behold, sometime later, the symptoms return. So the idea of yoga that it's an ongoing practice and the benefit is from the ongoing practice. One thing science can tell us about Shavasana is that it's important to dress warmly for Shavasana, because as we relax, the body tends to relax the tone in blood vessels in the arms and the legs, allowing more blood to go to the surface of the skin. If you aren't dressed warmly enough, you may get a little cold. And when you get cold, the body closes down those blood vessels to some degree or constricts them to some degree. And the way it does it is by activating the sympathetic nervous system, which is precisely the opposite of what we're trying to do when we relax. So it's a good idea to put on some socks, to put on an extra layer, to cover yourself with a blanket. All those things can help ensure that you will have a satisfying Shavasana. Could a different relaxing yoga pose substitute? B.K.S. Iyengar believed, for example, that the restorative pose Viparita Karani, in which you rest with your pelvis on a bolster, legs leaning against a wall, upper body kind of in a Shavasana position, could be a Shavasana substitute. Now, no one has actually studied whether Shavasana substitutes are as effective as Shavasana, so we don't have any science that can comment on that. As much as we would love to have scientific support for Shavasana as the capstone of a yoga practice, we really don't have it. But the yoga tradition does indeed teach that it's a valuable pose and one that can be done at the beginning of practice, in the middle of practice, between more active poses, and at the end of practice. I think it's fine that we do things that are based on the tradition, even if we don't have the scientific backing, and we can hope that sooner or later the scientists will catch up with us. How long should that Shavasana be? Again, I think we can look to the yoga tradition and not science. Now, Chandra Patel's studies of hypertension, they were doing Shavasana for 20 minutes. And in my experience, and in the experience of many yoga practitioners, after 8, 10, sometimes even 15 minutes is when the really deeper Shavasana seems to come. Relaxation is a habit pattern. And by doing Shavasana regularly, making it part of every yoga practice we do, we cultivate the ability to relax more deeply. Potentially much deeper than that. And with regular practice of Shavasana, regular practice of restorative poses, regular practice of meditation, and guided meditations like Yoga Nidra, for example, all these are ways to cultivate the ability to relax more deeply. And that ability improves over time. And I believe improves with more time in the pose. But we don't have any science to back us up on that. We've got to completely rely on the yoga tradition. And I think that we absolutely should do this in instances where we don't have science to guide us. Look to the tradition, look to our own experience, and that experience suggests that Shavasana is indeed a very valuable practice and probably shouldn't be skipped if you can avoid doing so. All right. Happy relaxing. Take good care. Namaste.